Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, Melanie, for joining us and talking about focusing anywhere, anytime. Melanie is from Fluff and Feathers. She is the head trainer there. She's a multi-certified trainer with degrees in psychology and applied behavioral science, analysis. And she works in zoos, aquariums, rescues, wildlife rehabbing, and also individual caretakers who have companion animals, and takes a science-based approach to not modify behaviors using fear, intimidation, coercion, and other aversives. And today we are going to be talking on something that's very, very important, which is focus on me anywhere, anytime. So Melanie, maybe you could talk us through that, and we'll just tell us, you go. I'll let you talk.
Yeah, I would love to. I'm a yapper, so this is awesome. I'm Melanie, and this topic is really near and dear to my heart because I have two basset hounds and a dachshund. So I have scent-based hounds, and those dogs are known to be very, very intrigued, infatuated, and really focused on their environment, which can lead to a lack of focus in me when I'm asking them to come here, when I'm asking them to leave that alone, especially when it's dead and it smells nice. Love for you to leave that alone. So this topic I deal with every single day of my life, and I work a lot with clients on this topic. And there are a lot of different things that we can do to help enhance our dog's ability to focus on us, especially leave something that's really desirable in the environment to come back to us, to focus on us, to listen to us, so that we have greater success in a variety of areas, not just recall, not just with leaving stuff, but also, if your dog gets excited and you still need them to stay close by, if, there's other dogs around, be like, hey, let's not go play with those other dogs. Let's look at me. Or maybe your dog's reactive and that's a little bit stressful, and that's something that can take away their engagement with you. So there's a lot of different applications for this that I think a lot of people struggle with and a lot of people have questions on and want to continue to build those skills with their dogs, for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, I think focus is such a difficult one, especially when you are struggling with something like reactivity, especially. But so do you want to, and as you said, basset hounds are remarkably stubborn in that sense where they get so focused on, and I'm not sure about a dachshund's probably a little bit like that too. They can get a little
A
bit
little
deaf when
bit.
it suits them. Yeah.
Yeah. I say when their nose turns on, their ears turn off. But now, my dachshund, she is completely deaf, and now she's starting to go blind. She's much older. So it's also, trying to get her to want to check in on me, to look at me so I can give her hand signals like, come back, girlfriend. Like, you're getting a little close to the woods there.
Yeah, that's interesting. And when the hearing's lost, yeah, I love a dog that checks in. Like, you can safely let them go and be off leash, and they can go and do their smells, but they check back in every now and then just to say, "Hey, you're still there? We still together?"
Yeah, that was a big thing with one of my Bassets, Ramona. She has tracking bloodlines. She's trained in search and rescue. She's quite good at it, despite her dumb dog personality. And so she's the type of dog that, like, I was like, I really want her to check in on me because that nose can take her far and beyond and just off. So that was something that I really worked hard with her on, and she's really successful with because of that.
That's really interesting. Just a little bit off topic. You said search and rescue. I can't actually imagine a basset hound doing search and rescue because
I
just
know.
because their body, like because they're not really, sorry, no disrespect. They're not what I would call an athletic dog, like a Malinois.
You mean? No, yeah, they're not. So we don't do it like professionally or anything, but there have been like a few people locally that like have lost their dog, and we found their dogs. And
Oh, awesome.
we also work with like my interns. My interns go, I live in the woods, so we go and hide in the woods, and Ramona goes and finds them. So it's not so much as like a career. Like, I would not put her skills on the line of someone's life, but it is fun enrichment, and it has been handy in the past.
Yeah. So let's talk about focus on me anywhere,
Yeah.
anytime. What should people be doing to build this?
Yeah. So I think really starting on building skills in an environment that's least distracting. I think every trainer can agree with that. Usually that's inside the house. For some animals, it needs to be a specific room that is pretty dull. No one else is around. It's just you and the dog. So they can really focus and you can build those skills and slowly start to branch out into different environments. So for some dogs, we may start in the office and then we move to the kitchen and then we move to the living room and then, we add a dog or two and then like we go to the backyard, then the front yard, then on our walking route. And then we can maybe go to a park with no one around and continue to build that slowly until we're in, stores, pet friendly stores. Until we're in, more busy environments, parades or something like that, big, community gatherings. And that way your dog has the skill. So you're not trying to generalize and polish a skill in a super distracting environment where it's going to be hard to keep their attention. It's something that's already known. It has a long reinforcing history where the dog knows if I do this, great things happen. And so they're going to use matching law more appropriately where they're going to weigh what is the most reinforcing scenario for me, and I'm going to perform that behavior. So they're going to be like, hold on a second. I get like awesome treats if I sit when she tells me to. That's kind of better than sniffing this little patch of grass where a dog peed prior. So they're going to be like, oh, sit. What's next? And that's what we want. Another really good tip is to use high valued reinforcers that aren't used any other time except for when in these really distracting environments, teaching new skills, when the skill is being challenged just a little bit. So they get extra reward. Maybe your dog loves balls and it's like, we are only going to throw the ball to the dog when like there is something pretty magical going on. Otherwise, they're going to get a stuffy toy, or we can use that with different types of food because some dogs are foodies like mine. And over time, we can phase out the food, put it on an intermittent schedule of reinforcement, or not reinforcing every single time, depending on a variety of situations. There's tons of different schedules. So then our dog isn't, just doing it for food. I don't think that dogs necessarily just do things for food, but some
Oh,
dogs that are foodies
yeah.
sometimes do just a little bit. And that's okay. I do too. But that way they're not just working for the potential piece of food. You're not just luring them around. They know the skill. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah. And as you say, so some dogs are less interested in food. I mean, if I had a ball in one hand or a tug toy in one hand and food in the other, my dogs would go for the toy every time. Yeah.
Yeah, we're foodies. We're
Yeah.
definitely food based in this house. They look at a toy and they're like, and
Yeah. And I mean, I guess it doesn't have to be one of the things that people say to me all the time, like when you're trying to get the dog to focus on a walk, is, oh, do I have to take food with me everywhere I go? My answer to that is always, why wouldn't you? But, but I guess if you're saying we're putting it on an intermittent schedule, then we're phasing it out. But again, sometimes it might be that they prefer the toy. And I just wrote an article actually for Happy Healthy Dog about praise. Like, how amazing is praise? Like, it is. People so underestimate the power of praise and how it can help a dog just go, if you're telling your dog they're the best dog ever, then the repercussions, that's not the right word, but the flow on effect is phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know like with my dogs, I could say yes, and that's their bridge, and they're like, oh. But if I go, yes, good girl, my God, Nona, you're so good, little nugget. She starts like, wow. And
I
like,
know.
because I work with so many different species, when I was in the Keys working with dolphins, like that was a big, I didn't think that praise meant that much to dolphins.
Oh,
But
really? Yeah, that's
oh my
interesting.
God,
Yeah.
like, because I work a lot, exotic wise with parrots, and we got to be real chill because they're very easily stimulated and heightened. You'll probably hear Munchkin in the background, one of my birds, because I'm talking. He's been chattering this whole time. But when it came to a dolphin and I saw that, I was like, oh my God. And like
Yeah.
dogs is especially dogs because they love to please us. They love us, we're
Yes,
everything, we're their whole world.
it's so true. Like you look at if you say ask for a focus or a sit or whatever, and here's your treat, good dog, as opposed to, oh my God, you're the best dog in the world, without sounding creepy, because I've heard people force that praise and then the dog knows it's not genuine, that you're just kind of saying it for the sake of it. But if you're genuine about you are the best dog ever, you see they start vibrating, their whole, their posture changes, and it's really powerful. Anyway, that's kind of well, it's not off topic, but it's
Yeah.
so what do you say to people then? Because a lot of people say, oh, my dog doesn't like food and they don't like to play, and is that, what can people like do in those circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the easiest things, it's never my first choice, but we can train for their meals. We can always do that. I like my dogs to be well fed and content, and then we train. I want them to want to train. I want them to want to work for
Work,
things,
yeah.
and earn things. But some dogs just do better with that, and that's okay. That's more of an individualized approach. But also, I think we can condition these things to be valuable to the dog. I think if we make tug and play super rewarding and exciting, and maybe for some dogs it's taking away a few toys, and again just kind of withholding them for special sessions, to really build up that drive and that value behind the item. We can do the same with food. I know a lot of people that say that their animal is not food motivated. Usually their dog is a little happily plump. Sometimes they get a lot of treats throughout the day for just being cute, which is fine. But also, can we just withhold them a little bit and like use them to our value? But usually just if all worst case scenario, we'll just work on conditioning it. And sometimes it's not a toy, and sometimes it's not food. Sometimes it is pets. Sometimes it is just talking to them. Sometimes it's moving to a different environment. What if we just go outside for a hot second and then we come back in and then we go outside for a hot second? And because outside is so rewarding to them, if we're working inside and they're doing great, let's go outside for a little bit. Let's go play and be in that distracting environment, safely, depending on the behaviors. Keep them on a leash, keep them away from other dogs, whatever. And then bring them back inside. So there's reinforcers aren't just stuck to toys or treats. It could be a variety of things depending on the individual dog.
Yeah, and it could be maybe your dog wants to go and play with another dog. Maybe their reward is that play, and then you ask them to come back, do the work, and then, oh, you can go and play again.
Exactly.
So I was with my girl Bertha, like because because I was with her mum, I didn't, kind of maybe train her right at the beginning when she was a puppy. So she was one of those dogs, like I'd have her off leash on my training field at the time, because I was in a club and doing, trialing and stuff. And she would see another dog and she's like, oh, I'm going over there, and just completely blow me off. So when she's great now, great dog now. So I worked on it and got it better. But with her puppy, with Bertha, I thought, I don't want to have to fix something. I want it to get it right in the first place. It's so much easier to get it right than fix something once it's, not right. So we'd go out to the park and she'd be da, 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 and then she'd look at me and then I'd say, yay, good dog, and, treat her. So she now will constantly check in with me, not because I asked her to look at me, but because I rewarded that check-in. And then she's like, oh, if I look. And that was a really good way of kind of building that up without actually requesting it, I guess. So, I mean, that's pretty easy to do with a puppy, but I'm sure there's people in this room now that have got older dogs that, maybe are struggling with that focus. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two games that we can kind of play, just like you played that game of just capturing that behavior when it happened. And just like you said earlier, which was also on my list to talk about, is always having a treats with you. Like capture that behavior when it happens, especially like drown them in treats and reinforcers when it's in that distracting environment and you finally get that engagement, even if you never asked for it. It's like, oh my God, finally did it. Thank you. So always having the treats with you and always capturing that behavior when you see it. And you can even start to, pair it with a verbal cue, like look at me, or, their name or whatever you want to, whatever you're doing, do it. And another thing that I like to play with my clients whose dogs have issues is a pattern game. I don't know if it has a technical name, but I've only known of it as like the 1, 2, 3 pattern game. And you work with your dog again in that non-distracting environment. And all you do is you count to 3 and you drop a treat. It's just 1, 2, 3, 3. 1, 2, 3. And you just keep doing it. And then eventually, when you're counting, your dog is not paying attention within the home. Try to catch them when they're doing something else. It's 1, 2, 3, and they should come running because treat. It happens every time. And then we can start to use that in other environments. You get a little count of 3, and you hopefully, usually with most cases, once you say 1, they are because they know the 3's coming and then a treat is coming. So I like to use little games like that where it's really repetitive and it's really consistent, and every single time you say 3 that happens. I know with Tootsie, my other basset, she was super good, super good growing up, and then we got into a really bad car accident.
Oh.
And so we really focused on just kind of getting her comfortable again. She had a lot of anxiety. We had to work a lot around cars because I was like, girl, we got to get over cars. Like, you have to go to the vet. Like, what if we travel or whatever? So we focused on that a lot, and we kind of lost her recall a little bit. She got a little messy with it because she'd be sniffing, and the ears are off, and I'd see her ears kind of turn a little bit, but she'd just keep walking away.
Yeah, she's not like she can't hear you. She can quite happily hear you. She just
Yeah,
doesn't want to pay attention to you.
exactly.
It's so funny when you do that because I mean I've got pointy-eared dogs, and you say hey, and they're like, it'll
Yeah.
swivel, and you're
Uh-huh.
like, I know you heard me.
Yeah. So like her, we call them Dumbo ears. She's an American Basset. Ramona's a European for anyone who's Basset enthusiast. And so like her ears get really wide I mean, like they
Yeah.
all do, all the floppy dogs, but like hers get like Dumbo. And so I was like, your Dumbo ears are showing. So like one thing that I did was, we taught specifically for recall, but I'm sure it could be used for literally all applications of just look at me or come back to me or do something. I used a whistle. A, Always a whistle. It was never my voice. I stopped asking her to come because that was useless right now. And so we worked at the basics with a whistle. And so every single time I blew that whistle, she came to me because every single time she got the highest value treat I could possibly have. Hot dogs. Big time hot dogs. And so and at the beginning she got a lot of them, and we continue to kind of bring that down. So now she's getting like a little slice and then cut into quarters. She's getting like a little quarter now. Um,
You
so then
meanie.
every single I know, getting she's definitely neglected. And so now when I blow the little whistle, she is and that's exactly what I needed. And still to this day, we've even worked with me calling her. She does not respond as well with my voice, even when I give her hot dogs with my voice, compared to
Because
that
they're
whistle.
tiny now. You got to give her bigger ones.
Yeah, yeah, she has to have entire hot dogs every single repetition. I don't make the rules, she does. So sometimes just, changing how you cue your dog, sometimes we've used it so much and it's had so many different applications. Maybe our reinforcing schedule hasn't been as consistent with reinforcing them every single time. If I ask Tootsie to come in the house, I don't always reinforce her because even though she's struggling with recall because I didn't have it on me or I didn't feel like it or whatever, I'm too busy. But outside, I'm always having these reinforcers, but when I'm saying it inside, there's no value, so she doesn't always come,
No.
So sometimes that can happen with people, or if you're working with like reactivity and you're trying to use it and you're just too close to the other dog constantly, you're working with a trainer, or maybe you're not, you're figuring it out through trial and error. over time, that cue kind of becomes really muddied. And sometimes it's just easier to abandon ship and start something new from the beginning with your new knowledge and education and a good structure, a good plan, than it is to try to revive that same cue.
Yeah, and you hear that people screaming at their dog, come, 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 come. And the dog's like, I didn't listen the first time. That word has no meaning to me anymore. I
Yeah.
think what you're talking about with the 1, 2, 3 game is brilliant. And I think what maybe we should emphasize here is how important it is to train it in that quiet environment first and train it and train it and train it and train it and train it. So there's no thinking about it. That dog is just on a I'm coming, yeah, and then taking it out to harder and harder places. But I actually wanted to explore capturing for anybody in the audience that maybe doesn't understand what that means. Can you maybe just delve into that a little bit deeper?
Of course. So capturing behavior is just capturing behavior when it happens. When the dog does the behavior, you mark it with something called a bridge. If you've ever known of what a clicker is or heard of clicker training, clicker is a bridge. A bridge is a signal or marker that tells the animal, yes, that's the behavior that we were after. Hence why my bridge is yes, because it doesn't have to be a clicker. It's any signal or marker. It could be hand signals. When I train fish, we use lights. But with dogs, I like to use like a yes cue or a good. I like to use my voice. That's always on me. Then it bridges the gap between the desired behavior being completed and the reinforcer delivery. So you don't always have to be super quick. Like that's online. A lot of people are like quick, 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 quick. And I know with my clients that stresses them out. And so I was like, you don't have to be because we're using a bridge. The dog knows that that treat is coming. Just like the 1, 2, 3 game, they know at 3 a treat is coming after. Once when they hear yes, they're going to be waiting for their treato. And it also starts the next behavior chain or the next set of behaviors that the dog does. Usually that could be watching your hand go to the treat pouch and then catching the food, ingesting the food, and then maybe they sit and they stare at you like, what's next? That's like a behavior chain. So it just sets the dog up for the next set of behaviors, which is usually waiting for the reinforcer delivery and consuming the reinforcer and either waiting for the next steps or if you're Tootsie, bouncing off to go do the next thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so with the recall, we want the dog to, they maybe you mentioned, they're sniffing at something and you want them back with you, but how much more difficult or what other layers do we have to add in for the dog that maybe sees, in my case, it might be a kangaroo, for other people, it might be deer, or, something that triggers their prey drive. What do we do about those dogs?
Yeah, that's a bit of a harder question. I got a lot of deer, fox, squirrels, rabbits being in the woods. We have a lovely family of deer. We have so many foxes. We have barn cats too. My neighbor has a farm behind me. Um, that's a little harder because we can't really set up that situation. Like we can't just go ask our neighbor to borrow their pet deer to do some training with, in the distance to work on the dog, seeing the deer and then still wanting to come back to you. I think if your dog has a high prey drive and has difficulty in those environments like that, a leash. A leash is so easy. It is that easy. Because if you ever come across that situation, then you can kind of be like, oh hey. I don't like using leash pressure for training. I really don't. But if you have a leash, you can kind of put just the slightest little like, hey, like hello, like a little tap. Or you can easily walk up to your dog and do that. But if your dog is really explosive around, a prey drive and stuff, I think trying to simulate that the best that we can within our abilities. Maybe we have a flirt pole, which is basically a giant cat toy for dogs. It's a giant pole with a line on the end with a stuffy on the end. And we can, move that around and stimulate it and get that prey drive kind of going. And, outside of those sessions, if your dog knows a leave it, knows a sit stay, knows a, watch me or whatever it is, we could play and then ask for that behavior. And if it doesn't happen, we can start to kind of work through it and redirect the dog. We'll just drop the pole. We could either put the reinforcer in front of their face and kind of guide it back up here and be like, watch me, hello. Or we could take the toy off the pole and work on just saying leave it with inside. I know that there are hunters in my area. If you know a friend of a friend, and depending on the wildlife laws, like I can easily get some deer hide from someone, and I can get my dogs to sniff it, and we can work on leaving that scent and leaving that object. So not all deer smell the same, but everyone has, they have a general smell. So if they kind of smell it, they're going after it, and I say leave it, they're like, wait a second, we worked on that, and that could be helpful. But ultimately, I think if we're worried about dogs like running off in those situations, let's just keep them on a leash just in case and kind of work through that, because it's just going to be so hard with wildlife to train for those situations without somehow stimulating them. Like maybe, and this, I don't even know. I work with wildlife rehabbers, and I don't even know if this is a thing, but you could ask a local one if they have any that are not releasable, that you could bring your dog through a fence line and kind of expose them to it that way. But I don't know that's a more tricky subject, but might be something that might spark your interest. Maybe there's someone or maybe someone who's smaller scale that might be more willing and interested to do that.
Yeah, it's fun. It's interesting to train, and I think you could possibly have a second person as well. Oh, there's a dachshund, a hairy one.
Yes, yep, that's the Roxy Bear.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think one way of doing it would be having two people, both with toys. I know it's not quite a prey thing, but if somebody is distracting and maybe playing with your dog, and then you call your dog back, and the idea being that the other person stops playing, and then they come back to you to play, and then you can release them to the toy over there, and then they stop playing when you call them, and yeah, it
That's
can
a
work like
perfect.
that as well. Yeah,
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 that's another way, just like the flirt pole. If you have two people, that's another really good method. And again, you could also have the hide over there, and someone has the hide, and then
yeah, yeah, yeah.
then so that there's a lot of options with that.
Yeah, I remember Bertha, I was walking Bertha off leash, and she's the one that checks in a lot. Well, they all do, but her in particular, the one that it was a puppy, and I went, I'm not going to stuff this up. And we went around this corner, and there's this great big kangaroo, and she's like, I'm gone. And I'm like, Bertha, come on. And she turned on a dime and came straight back to me. And oh my God, we threw a party. I was like, oh
Oh
my God,
yeah.
you're the best dog. Oh, I'm so proud of you.
Yeah, and I know, like with my girls, I try to like look out the windows before letting them go for the deer. But I remember one night specifically, it was like 1 a.m. I was so tired, I was not thinking, and girl just let Ramona go outside. It was just her. I only did one at a time, and she didn't have a leash on, and I heard the little, and I went, no, no, and all of a sudden, she's off, and
Um,
I was like, Mona, come now. And so there she is coming back. But even during the day, like I worked a lot with my girls in my yard for perimeter because I don't have a fence. I have brush, which stops me from going back there, but not their little legs. They go
yeah.
right under it. So I, really worked with them to teach them like a fence, like, don't go into the brush. So, Tootsie the other morning, um, right out the front door. Just there was a squirrel right after squirrel,
Oh,
and poor squirrel, he was screaming, and he went right up a tree, right outside the brush line, and that dog stopped right at the brush line and
oh,
stared at
wow.
that squirrel right on
Yeah.
up that tree, and I was like, yay, just like you. So there's it can be done. It can be done. Maybe not with every single dog. I can't say that every single dog has
Yeah.
the skills and the trust that you could put in them. But most of the time, if you continue to work on it with the right approach, you can get pretty dang good.
Yeah. So have you got, I mean, I've got some questions coming in. There's lots in the chat room which we can go through, and I've got a couple here on my Word document. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we get to them, or you?
Yeah, I think the last big thing on my list, I have a long list. I didn't know how much time we would be able to talk and how many
Wait, no,
questions would
you
come
tell,
in.
speak,
No, no,
because
no. So this,
everybody's here to hear what you've got to say. So yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, the last big one I think that is important is to give outlets. So my dogs, they do not come, they do not listen because they sniff. So what am I going to do? I'm going to set up more sniffing activities for them. That's why I do a lot of scent training with my dogs because it's fun for everyone. I enjoy it. That's why I got bassets. That's why I have sniffers. But also it's fun for them. They get to find things and they get to smell things, and we do different scents, not just the ones that they're trained to track or find or anything like that. So we do, I mean, I let them sniff everything, anything. We go specifically for sniff walks and outings where they can be wild monsters or whatever they want and they can just sniff. If your dog likes to chase things and have that high prey drive. There's a lot of different dog sporting events and stuff out there that have all types of, for especially for sight hounds. I forget what it's called off the top of my head, but it's like the little bag on the line that goes around,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
that
yeah.
thing's
Little
called.
coursing.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, I
whatever
love
that
that.
is.
Yeah,
Man, those songs, that's something good. That's something real good.
yeah, I
So there's
love
a
it.
lot of different outlets, the flirt pole and stuff like that, that is a little bit more manageable for the everyday person. Um, Anything that your dog is getting distracted by, how can you give them more of it? So it's not as new, it's not as exciting, it's not as engaging, it's a little bit more mundane, and that need is fulfilled,
Yeah.
because my girls, they need to sniff 24/7. I call them my little TSA agents when we come in the house. They're like, gotta do the whole up and down on you. It's like, I want to give them as much sniffing as possible. I want to give them snuffle mats and puzzle toys and different smells. And so then when they're going outside, it's, oh, okay, like that's fun, but treats,
Yeah.
mom.
That's really, I think a lot of people struggle with that, like especially the dogs, not so much the sniffers, but the dogs that like to tug on things.
Uh-huh.
I think people, oh, I can't do that because I don't want to encourage that behavior, as opposed to seeing it as this is a really great outlet for my dog, so they don't do it when I don't want them to.
Yeah, and I work with, like, I just recently last week was with a client who has a herding mix, crazy, just all herding breeds, and having issues with, nipping children a little bit, having issues with, some of those herding frustration behaviors we see. And so I was like, well, why don't we teach her to herd? Like, why don't we get some of the, like, the jolly eggs? Why don't we um do I think it's called like tray ball,
Yeah,
which,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And they have to
so
push
that's,
it through big hoops and things, I think. Yeah.
yeah, so that's what I was like, let's do tree ball. I've never taught a dog to do this myself. I was like, but I said, let's let you be the guinea pig because they're not going to do it for the sport. I said, and within a week, that she's already emailing me, oh my God, so many behaviors have decreased, like the hyperactivity, like the nonstop go, go, go. Like, this dog is able to finally relax. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yay, thanks God.
Yeah.
And she's just barely pushing the ball at this point, and that's all it took. So I think giving a dog an outlet is very important for the behaviors that they value the most.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Right. Anything else on your list before we get to the questions? Go, go.
Um, yeah, no, I think those were honestly the main ones that are going to be the most helpful and the most applicable to people more universally.
Yeah.
And now, we can get into some people's more individualized questions.
Yeah. All right. So the first one I've got here came through earlier. Said, I have a fear reactive dog who totally lacks any focus once he sees another dog. He's not food or toy orientated, so distraction is virtually impossible. How can I get him to focus on me? Now, I know you've already touched on some of this, but yeah.
Yeah, I think working on skills before bringing a dog in, but also I think in this situation, if the dog is not food, treat, toy, not typical reinforcer motivated. I think we could use systematic desensitization, which is a nice little fancy word. But studies have shown using systematic desensitization with negative reinforcement has actually been more valuable to the animal and helped the animal progress the behavior faster than using positive reinforcement, which is quite crazy. If anyone wants to email me asking for that study, let a girl know. I'm happy to share it because I'm not saying it, they are. I've used it for my parrot, who is very reactive to humans, almost killed two people quite literally. And now he doesn't have any reactivity to people, not even new strangers, which is big for birds. So essentially what you would do is you would have another dog have a very neutral, I don't care about other dogs dog around. And I mean, as much space as humanly possible. Huge field, huge field. And I would start as far away as possible and slowly walk your dog towards the other dog. And you can do this like side to side and kind of like slowly come in like that to the other dog, or based on however your dog kind of responds to things. That's where the individualized knowing your dog would help. But slowly come in, and once when you see your dog start to go, huh? Don't go any closer. We want just a huh? And once when they acknowledge the dog, all you're going to do is mark it. You're going to use your bridge. You're going to be like, yes, awesome. You acknowledge the dog without a blow up. And now we're going to go the opposite way. And we're just going to walk far away. And we can do the big praise and stuff. We can see if pets are awesome. We can try those other methods. And then what we're going to do is walk right back to that distance. Sometimes it's helpful to drop something so you kind of know where that distance is, and it's also observable and measurable, so we can see like we were at this distance and we did that for a couple of times, and now the dog looks and then kind of like looks back or looks at the dog and starts to look the other way to back up. And once when we're seeing those behaviors, we're going to take one single step forward. So the purpose of and we'll just keep taking steps forward until we're getting close to the dog. And though we're using technically negative reinforcement as distance as the reinforcer, there is a slight aversive. We're working well under threshold. I mean, like we are working where it is literally just a huh? It is not a whoa. It is not a ooh. It is not a time to bite, like a time to react to get the dog away, because the more the dog has a reaction, which usually they're fear-based, and the more the dog has a reaction and they have this big blow up, and then either you take the dog away from the dog or that other dog walks away, that distance is created. The dog gets reinforced for that reaction. That's what got him away. They don't understand that that dog was literally just walking that way and they were going that way no matter what. So the less instances that we can have with that, and we're literally using the same methods that kind of developed these behaviors to counter condition the dog's response to other dogs, as like it's whatever, like you don't have to react to have that distance to be created. And then they learn like, oh wait a second, I haven't like died yet. Like nothing bad has happened to me throughout this process. And over time that can really help significantly decrease their reactivity, either distance wise or the intensity. And then we can start to work on other behaviors and trying some of these other methods that we talked about in this call, to try to see if we can change that dynamic a little bit, where maybe we are using food or a toy or maybe the pattern game or something else to heavily reinforce, because it's not always practical to create distance. So that's where that method kind of falls a little short. Some people are limited to sidewalks in big cities. What are you going to do?
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah. Okay, so Anna says, I have 4 dogs, oh my goodness, and my 2-year-old Doberman, German Shepherd, Chow, and a Belgian Malinois mix is incredibly unfocused. Wow. I'm very interested in this topic. Thank God he is not aggressive or reactive. Oh, okay, she's just commenting. Don says, Bassets are so cool. I imagine cleaning ears is a constant job.
It is. And honest to God, like Ramona was being a European, so they have the extra skin folds. They're the ones that are known to have the skin issues because of that if they're not bred properly. She actually has the cleanest ears out of all of them. My dachshund has the worst. Always had the worst. Always horrible. And Tootsie's ears are always really dry, which helps with infections, not getting them. But then it's really hard to get the crud out. So it's always
Yeah.
a full-time job over here, once a week.
Michael says, is it possible to take the same approach with older dogs as you do with adopted or dogs you are not familiar with, e.g., if you're pet sitting?
Yeah, I think you can definitely use similar methods. I would only say like the caveat to that is that I would start at the bare basics with every single dog. I do that just in general because it's easier to blow through a skill and kind of like refresh it than it is to assume the dog has a skill and then get everyone's frustrated because we're not getting it, or put in a dangerous situation, possibly depending. Or it's trained not as cleanly, as crisp, as reliable, whatever the label you want to use. It's not trained as well. So I just like to start at the very bare basics and continue to build the dog up. I'm sure that a dog that knows you or a younger dog is probably going to learn faster, just like with humans. But I'm telling you what, old people can still learn new things. Same with dogs, all species. It just might take a slightly slower approach, or you might have to change it slightly depending on the individual. So that's a little bit harder without knowing the individual animal that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's interesting. A friend of mine adopted a Roddy that had been just put in a backyard and left to its own devices, and she she rescued it, if you like. And she said this, and she's a trainer, right? So she said this dog doesn't know how to learn things. Like it just didn't understand how to learn because nobody had ever done anything with it where it was taught. Like even just a sit was a struggle for this dog. It was really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so and that's really individualized. I just had a foster basset, Daphne, who found her a wonderful home. I'm so happy. She's doing great, and she was a Amish puppy mill breeder dog. So she had, cuts out of her ears for identification, like swine do. Her tail was docked. Her memories drag the ground. Like she was
oh,
just, she's 4 years
gosh.
old and she didn't know a day of training in her life. And so
Yeah.
I got her. And for her, she loved it. She picks things up quite quickly. All things considered, it was slower than when I taught Ramona to sit. I mean, Daphne took 2 sessions to learn to sit compared to half a session, like Ramona, when she was a puppy. But she still learned to sit. I used the same methods. It took a little longer, a little bit more patience, staying at steps, a little bit longer to build up that consistency of like, yes, this is what I was asking. We finally got her to sit, and I didn't expect her to stay seated, because I was like, she didn't know to stay seated. So having like expectations based upon the dog's learning drive, and their where they are in their skill sets, and the age definitely has a factor in that. Breed can have a factor in that. Genetics, big time. So, it all depends, but I think you can use pretty similar, start. And if you're ever having issues or questions, I'm sure you can email either one of us, and we would love to be able to just kind of help give you some ideas.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I say, Melina was asking, is capturing the same as free shaping?
Um, Pretty similar.
Yeah.
I'd have to say.
Yeah, I'd say it would be. Yeah.
Yeah.
John says my dog will freeze in the middle of the street at times. Are all over. Fast drivers are all over, and sometimes I need to scoop him up to keep him safe. Oh, try to gentle constant tension with his lead parallel to the ground sometimes works.
Yeah, I would say in that situation, working in the house on either like a nose target or just luring him with your hand. So I think the hand lure is probably like the easiest. So just grab a whole handful of really nasty smelling good stuff that the dog likes, or have the toy or whatever, and just put it right in front of their nose and just walk them forward. And there you go, you got it. And walk them forward. Start walking them around your house, and then walk them outside, and then start on a nice, quiet, lovely little road. Or a parking lot. Oh my God, yeah, parking lot. That's a better place. Put him in a parking lot and practice on that surface, and then we'll get to roads and stuff. So if anything ever happens like that where he does freeze, he probably shouldn't at that point, at least not very consistent like it seems to be right now. But if he ever does it, you can just put your fist down, emulate that you have food, even if you don't, and ask for your dog that cue, whatever you use for your dog to. I usually use heel because that's how I like to teach heels with the handler. So I'd be like, Mona, heel, and then she'd come and we walk right across the road, so then everyone is safe. But it is good that you can scoop up your dog, and they are a scoopable size.
Yeah,
So
I wouldn't be able to do it.
yeah, I can. 65 pounds would be a big scoop.
Oh. Don says dogs have levels of sensory priority they act and react to. Kathy says, would you start with a whistle in the house or just like the 1, 2, 3, I guess, as opposed to outside?
Yeah, I would start with both in the house, wherever it is the easiest for your dog to focus.
Yeah. Barbara says, for fast, large dogs, is that Barbara Brune? Sorry, she's one of my clients if it is. Fast, large dogs with high prey drive use a horsewhip with toy tied to the end. Yeah, so like a flirt pole. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. John says, so when lots of small mammals are in an urban environment, like kitty cats, or maybe, yeah, other squirrels, we don't get squirrels here, so it's not an issue that I've ever had to deal with. I mean, we get the kangaroos and the wallabies, etc., and stuff like rabbits and hares, but not squirrels.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know how, I don't know how I would go with squirrels. So when lots of small mammals are in an urban environment, we just keep on the leash.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, and especially I feel like I see it a lot on social media nowadays, how everyone is like high prioritizing, valuing off leash stuff, and saying like that's like your dog could be off leash. That's like, you're a good trainer, and there's a lot of emphasis right now on being off leash. But like being on leash doesn't decrease the value of their experience. They're sure like I'm not sprinting with my dogs like for a mile. There's no way. That's not me. And that's not my dogs either. But thankfully, but like, for people who, you said we have super long leashes nowadays. And if your dog has like a pretty good recall, they know, once when they feel a little tension on the leash, that's kind of like the end of the leash, and not to continue to like pull and drag you. The flexible leashes in the right environment, like as long as your dog is trained, because they sometimes can fail, like they're great to have a long line that's super nice, compact, convenient for us to carry around. I think keeping a dog on the leash is it's a good thing.
Yeah, I kind of look at it like they have to earn their freedom. And if they're not able to listen to you, then they haven't earned their freedom yet. And there's
Yeah.
more work to be done from the human side of things to build that up. But also, so here on the Gold Coast where I am in Australia, they've just brought, I don't know how long it's been going, it's on, but I got caught the other day with my dog off the leash because I know they recall. And she just gave me a warning, thank goodness, because they've put the fines up. And when years ago, last time I heard, it was about $140 Australian. Then she said, oh yeah, well, then we put it up to $420 or something like that. She said, but now it's $806. And I'm like, whoa. So now I'm
Wow.
like, she just let me off with a warning. But I was that person that had, two dogs out at once. I could have been hit with the $1,600 fine. So it's a lot of
Yeah.
money. But so now I've got a long line. It's 10 meters, which is perfect. But it's, they feel like they're off leash, but I'm still at the other end sort of thing. I'm actually going to get a 15-meter one though, just to give them that. I'm not because they're big dogs, I'm not a huge fan of flexi leashes. I
Yeah.
just like them to have that. I think it feels more free to them to have like a line as opposed to, the thing that comes out sort of thing. So that's just me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I prefer the long lines, but I know some people are like, I gotta carry all this around. It gets tangled around me, and I
Yeah,
hear
yeah,
all the excuses. So I'm like, you know what? If flex and leash works for you, as long as your dog is safe, everyone's safe, following
yeah,
leash laws, and leash laws are getting worse and worse because people aren't training their dogs, or
yeah.
they
That's the
are,
problem.
but not in a crazy new environment and stuff where this information would probably be helpful.
Yeah. And she's like, well, there are dog council parks. And I'm like, yes, but I don't like them because even if my dogs are neutral to other dogs, most of the dogs there, they're off their heads, they're off their faces. They get, if they get into my dog's space, there's going to be an issue. They're not that big, most of them. So, you've got all these dogs that don't know each other in this enclosed
Yeah.
space. Yeah, it's
I
not.
feel the same way, and then because Ramona has a weakened immune system, like I'm just like she got Giardia for 6 months because she couldn't kick it. I mean, like constant treatment. It was
Oh,
a mess, and she kept reinfecting the other two. She did that 3 times, and it was horrible. So since then, like large areas where a lot of dogs make like dog parks and because I don't trust that your dog is healthy, and I don't want mine to not be healthy. So
yeah.
not just from what you said, but also like I'm like it is just a
Oh, totally.
disgusting
Yeah.
little toilet all right there. No thank you. No thank you.
My actually years ago, my Roddy, I did take him. It was my very first Roddy as an adult, and I did take him to a dog park. And he drank out of the communal water bowl and got an infection in his mouth. So that was, yeah, no.
Yeah.
Ray, I think it says Ray. I haven't got my glasses on. Yeah, Ray says, I mean, personally, so this is after John's comment about the urban environment. So, personally, I do impulse control so that they don't chase anything unless told to, starting with their own toys, such as frisbee and balls. If they can't recall off their own toys, they can't recall from or leave other things in the environment.
And that's really cool to hear about because I know for in my house, like I have 10 parrots and now I have a house duck. He was special in the I his name is Tugboat. Uh, so they're on my house. They fly. They walk on the ground. They'll if the dogs come by, they're lunging at the dogs. Like they're doing all the things that can stimulate a dog to want to attack them. And that was something
They're not
really
very
important.
smart ducks then.
Yeah. So that it was really important from a young age that my dogs learned impulse control and environmental management skills. They know a station or to go to their bed until called off because if there's something going on that's pretty rowdy, it's like just stay over there, let me take care of this, and then you can come off. The leave it, the drop it, a lot of drop it, a lot of please stay away from that. And we did the same thing. We started with treats because that was more valuable than a toy. I tried to do toys because that's pretty stimulating. Then I got birds molted feathers, and I was like, you see this, don't you dare. I'm like, don't even think about it. And now, like, I don't trust my dogs. I never trust my dogs. I will never trust any predator around a prey. But my dogs are sleeping on the couch and my birds are on the couch with me, and we're all cohabitating. It's more now just managing the birds to stay away from the dogs because that's not fair.
How do you house train a duck? I mean, because they leave kind of big yucky blobs.
Yeah, you don't. You don't
Oh,
house train animals. House train birds, I should say. Yeah, you don't do that. Ducks, they have diapers for ducks. So
oh.
he'll get a nice he'll get a little diaper on. With the parrots, it's kind of like just pick it up frequently. Once an
Oh,
hour I
yeah.
go around and just kind of with
Yeah,
a
but they're not
microfiber
so
cloth.
bad. Ducks are like, bleh.
Not as bad. If they
Okay.
haven't been around water for, like an hour or so, they do start to solidify a little bit.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, he's definitely a super duper pooper, that's for sure.
Oh, okay, okay. So it was Barbara. Hi, Barbara. So I do think just going back to John's thing about urban environments, I think they're different challenges to the rural environment, but I think it can be so hard for people with reactive dogs in an urban environment if they're walking down the street and they turn the corner, they never know what's around the corner, do they? How do you, if you've got that dog and you go around the corner, and there's another dog, what would you suggest people do, if they've put the work in already with maybe the 1, 2, 3 or whatever it is, that whole focus, but then they turn a corner and surprise, how do you navigate that?
I think the easiest of the solutions is to teach your dog a sit stay. And before you turn that corner, sit, stay, whoop. Okay, no, we're good. Let's go. So then you never run into that like, ooh, because not only is it surprising for us, but it's really surprising for the dog. So even if they have the skills, it's all of a sudden like, whoa, like, and then here comes all these big feelings, even if they don't have big feelings usually. If beyond that that kind of like try to can you change directions? Why do you have to walk that way? Is there another route? Can we just change to the other side of the street real quick? Can we create distance otherwise, even if inconvenient, until our dog has those skills where we can get them by? Maybe we do have that hand lure if they're really good at it, and we put the dog up against the building. Then there's us, here's our food lure, and here's the other dogs out here, so then we can kind of keep them a little bit more contained, a little bit more focused. There's no distractions over here. There's a wall, and then here's us, and here's something right in front of your face. Can we lure them through that situation? Can we just kind of announce, hey, got a reactive dog, can you stop for a second? And that's 50-50 depending on the person. Some people are like, I don't care about you and your dog, control it, and just keep walking.
Yeah.
I mean,
they
that's
just don't care.
Yeah, they'll just say, train your dog, and you're like, I'm trying, I'm working on it right now.
Too much judgment.
Yeah, it can be hard. I think like the easiest solution is to have that sit stay to be able to check the corners, or just try to change direction. Having the food lure, just dropping a bunch of treats on the ground, or just grabbing the tug toy. Let's just play tug. Who cares? We'll take up the sidewalk. I don't care. Like, be one of those people that demand the space and advocate for your dog. My dog needs a tug right now. We're going to take up a little bit of room. So sorry. Walk around us.
What do you say to people, and I'm sure your clients, if they've got a reactive dog, it's tough because they're so used to their dog reacting, and they're trying to work through it and they train it. But when they see another dog, not the dog, when the person sees another dog, it's really hard to stop that heart racing and start pounding. And then, that's going to be a negative for their dog because they pick up on all that stuff. So what do you say to those people?
Get around other dogs. No, have some exposure therapy. I think it's really tough because everyone responds differently, and anything I say right now, anyone who goes through that is going to be like, yeah, right. Because they know, and they've tried it. They really have. I think that comes with consistency in their dog's behavior. I think setting up more sessions, more training sessions, kind of creating these artificial environments where your dog can be successful, like in the field. We ask a friend who has a dog, a parent or whatever, hey, can you just bring Fluffy down to the park real quick, and have more sessions where there is less reactivity. So it's not like, oh God, here we go. It's like, okay, we worked through this yesterday and we kind of did okay. Let's try to reassure ourselves that way. But I think, just avoid it. Just walk in the other direction. If you're having trouble controlling yourself and you've tried a lot, just try the other direction. Try creating the distance. Try to not create the explosion, and just try your best. I think that's all that we can really ask for when you're in that situation with your dog, especially long term.
Yeah. And I guess that what you're saying is if they do some training, even if it's within a trainer that's, they're building their confidence, showing them that their dog can do it, then once they appreciate that their dog can do it, then they get more confident. So when they are out and about, then they're not so, oh my God, there's a dog. Yeah, they can say, oh, my dog's got this, we've got this. Yeah.
Yeah. Have a lot more confidence and trust in the skills that you've trained. And I feel like a lot of people who are like, oh my God, still working through those initial stages. And if you're still not seeing a lot of success and having a lot of, oh my God, then we need to go back and reassess our training plan and our approach to this, because it's not helping either of you. And
Yeah.
now you're both becoming reactive of dog people or whatever it is. And so, just trying to have more situations where you're not stressed around other dogs with your dog.
Yeah, yeah. Ray says, question, how do you balance removing novelty from a thing and avoiding creating unwanted habits? My dog is certainly a creature of habit, so she does more of what she rehearses. Example, fetch feeds into chase drive, which makes her want to chase more. Remove fetch from her life and she is far less tempted to chase. Herding stuff, however, is a great outlet for her. She's a border collie, she loves it, and it prevents her from herding without permission from me. Interesting question.
It is an interesting question. What are your thoughts on that? Let's flip the table. What are your initial thoughts? Let's start the conversation.
My dog is certainly a creature of habit. So basically what you're saying, Ray, is your dog is rehearsing the fetch, which builds the chase drive, which means she wants more of it. So you're giving, I mean, for me, what you've basically said is you're giving her other outlets in terms of the herding stuff, which is great. So does she need to fetch?
That's what I was wondering, because that was the same herding client that I talked about earlier with the tribal had mouth bleeding, toe pads bloodied and cut up from running in the grass playing fetch. And I'm sitting there like, so why are we playing fetch? If this is such an issue, why are we rehearsing it? Like, what value does that have? Usually fetch with dogs who have such a drive like that, it's actually kind of a negative thing. Your lab should not constantly be bringing you a ball like, throw it now, please throw it, like eye twitching, like throw it for me all the time. That's like an unhealthy obsession. And where's the value in it?
I think that's why you see, especially border collies, a car or a bike goes past on the road and they're like,
No. Yeah.
I'm going to bite it. Or if they're off leash, I'm going to chase it.
Yeah.
I mean, my dogs love playing fetch. I'm always really careful with it though, anyway, because that risk of cruciate ligaments or, something bad happening. So I do try to give them other outlets. So it might be tracking. They like, they've got they're Belgian Shepherds. They like to use their nose and sniff things out and stuff. Or tug. So I'm trying to give them other outlets so I don't have to keep throwing that ball, because if I kept throwing that ball, they would totally get obsessed and they probably would hurt themselves in the long run, physically damage themselves. But so that's, yeah.
Yeah, I think, no matter what the behavior is, we have to assess the value of that behavior in that dog's life, the value of how healthy it is, the value of, is this bringing us towards our behavioral goals? What is this accomplishing? And once when you start to physically write it down, the pros and cons, you'll have your answer right there if we should continue this behavior or continue this approach. Because I do that with my clients a lot when we're talking about training plans. It's like, where are we? How fast did it take us to get here? Not that it's a race, but how long did that take us? And what other criticisms we have? And then it's like, is this still the right approach? We do that at the beginning of every session. How was our week? How was our time apart? Where are we now? Let's continue or let's change it.
Yeah, and for me, it's if a dog is, I don't like a dog to rehearse a behavior I don't want. So if that behavior is promoting my dog chasing things or doing something I don't want, then I'm going to give it other outlets. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also working on, those games, like especially the one you talked about with two people, have one person have that flirt pole and then ask the dog to come off that flirt pole and come back to you, that could be something that could be valuable as well. So maybe they can still have a little bit of that chase and if they love ball, awesome, let them have the ball for a little bit, but also still have a little bit of control in that situation and be able to tell the dog like it's enough. And also limit, even with the training, the duration of time you're doing it.
Yeah, and I think as we were talking about, I mean, a chase outlet might be lure coursing, or as Barbara said, fast cat, something like that. So
Yeah.
still getting that outlet, it's done in a safe environment and it is controlled. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's like we're setting this up, it's not like, we're just doing it all willy-nilly. Like maybe we don't set it up in our backyard and maybe it's something that is portable. Like some of those courses, are portable and you can quickly set them up somewhere else. Or we're going to a class or an event and it's something super specific. So just in that environment, we see those behaviors. And
Context.
usually dogs are amped up anyway in those situations.
Oh
They're
my
always like,
goodness.
yeah,
They're nuts. Yeah. But I
yes,
think
yeah.
context is really important in that case, isn't it? Because, yeah, we're going to give you this outlet to chase, but only here in this place at this, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're gonna relax criteria. You can be a nuthead right here. That's okay. Like this is your moment to shine. Like it's okay if you're barking. It's okay if you're, really focused and stuff like that, and not really focused on me. I will work in this environment to keep everyone safe and manage it, and keep it all fun and exciting. But elsewhere, I need a little bit more control of the of you. I need control of your behaviors, and so we need to teach specific behaviors and not allow others to happen, like, chase and ball and stuff like that.
Yeah. So Michael says, how do you incorporate the concepts and techniques discussed today when you know that there are known triggers for the animal and that it will most likely distract and disrupt your attempts to get their attention?
So it's a little broad, but let's try to dig in on this. So if there's known triggers, then we should try to stimulate those triggers in a controlled environment. That is in the controlled, known, least distracting environment. So I'm just going to say, like, the dog is super reactive when I show this blue squeaky toy because this is pretty easy. We can do a person, we can do a dog, we can do an animal, we can do this kind of covers a little bit of everything. So blue squeaky toy, right? Like that's everything to this dog. And so we're going to work with other squeaky toys first that aren't blue and aren't furry, whatever this one looks like. We're going to work on the complete opposite with toys. We're going to build whatever skill we feel like we need. A leave it, a watch me, the 1, 2, 3 game, like, I don't know, a whistle, whatever you want to use. We're going to work there with that. We're going to work in a nice controlled environment. And then we're going to start slowly branching out like we talked about before. And then we're going to incorporate something that is similar. So now this is a brown furry toy. Or maybe a yellow because dogs can see blue and yellow. It's a blue super triggering. Let's try yellow. So now we're going to do that. And then we're going to go to our blue fuzzy toy back in that really controlled environment, working on those skills. And maybe we start the session with one of the toys that isn't as reinforcing. So then we can remind them of the skill that we're working on. And then we can bring in that super triggering object. And then over time, we stop starting with the easy object, but that's to get the dog kind of in the mindset of like, we're generalizing and transitioning this behavior to different objects. And then we continue to build there elsewhere. So this could be dogs, this could be a person, this could be whatever, it could be a smell. You could put a little scent in one of those little scent jars or cheap off of Amazon. And you could put anything in there. You can go gather some cat poop out there if the neighbor's cat likes to poop in your yard and you ask your dogs not to eat it. So you can go gather that up. So there's ways that you can emulate it in that controlled environment, the best of your abilities. We did kind of talk about wildlife. That's pretty challenging. I would just recommend working with a professional if you're really struggling with wildlife so they know your individual dog, the individual animal, and we can kind of come up with those solutions like that. I also recommend it with reactivity to other dogs or people, of course. But I think trying to just emulate it is going to be your best bet and not putting your dog right out in the real world situation and then trying to learn there.
Yeah, I think the other issue might be that people maybe they get it right in the home, and then they just rush the process to take it out in the real world. So that
Yeah.
building that foundation is really important. Yeah.
Yeah. Always just go back to basics.
Yeah. Kathy says it's so frustrating with a leash reactive dog in that in the million dog urban environment. Yeah. Yeah, it is hard.
Yeah.
Oh, Don wants to see your bassets. Are they there?
Yeah. Tootsie, Mona, come here. I know they're sleeping on my bed, so it might take a couple of tries to get them up. But
Ah,
here goes one. It's Mona. Hey, Mona!
oh,
Hello! Come here, babies! Come here! Okay, so this is Miss.
oh, gosh.
This is our little
Oh,
trouble child. This is
oh,
the one
she's
that finds
beautiful.
all the lost doggies.
Look at the ears.
She is the absolute best. She's hilarious. She's very lovable.
Ray
She's
says your dogs are too cute. It's too much.
and then Roxy, she's over here. She's my dachshund. She's very easy to pick up. This is Miss
Yeah.
Roxy.
Oh, she's sweet. Look
She's
at her face.
14, so she's
Oh,
just an old lady. Tootsie, come on. She really might not get up because she
that's
does
all
not
right.
like to leave my bed. So we'll see, see if she joins us. Ramona oh, hey, come on, girlie. There she is. She's coming.
Oh, I
Very
can see she's dawdling down. Oh, there she is.
good.
Oh, she's beautiful.
You. Aw, such a good girl. Come here, baby. Ugh. And then this is Tootsie.
Her ears aren't as big as the other ones. Hello,
Yeah, hers are definitely
guys.
wider.
They're still huge, aren't they? Oh, is
Yeah,
this the
they
one with the
are.
Dumbo ears?
Yes, this is
Oh,
Dumbo.
Dumbo. Oh,
Yep, so
she looks
these are my
shy.
awesome.
She's like, what?
Yep, jealous is like, why is she being held and not me? Yep, so these are my girls. I was picking on you girls, you just don't know it.
We've still got a few questions left. Are you okay to
Oh
keep
heck
talking?
yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. All right. So Ray says, how do you get a dog to stay in a sit stay without dropping into a down? It's a preference for my sheepdog as it's inbred to do a down while herding. Unfortunately, it's part of the Kennel Club Good Citizens Award assessment, even though we don't need it in lieu of a downstay in real life scenario. So just for well, not for for your certification. Mm.
Yeah. So if I'm getting it, the dog likes to do a stay lay down and not a sit stay. And so anything time you ask for a sit stay, it lays down.
Yeah, so he
Yeah.
wants a sit stay, but it lies down. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would work on that. I would work on reinforcing only the sit. Like we know the dog knows to lay down. So we're not going to give any reinforcers when the dog lays down now. We're going to only do it when the dog sits. And all we're going to ask is for a sit at real quick, like sit and then you can like get up and do anything. Sit and get up and do anything. And if you're somebody who likes to use a release cue specifically, ask for the sit, say good dog, give the dog a treat, and immediately go okay or whatever your release is. So then when they get up or they lay down or they do something, it's already been released. I would then do a higher rate of reinforcement once when they are reliably sitting when asked to keep them in that sit. And a high rate of reinforcement is just one after another, after another, after another. If you're using a toy, a quick little bite tug thing and then off and quick little bite tug thing and off. As long as they're not getting up from that sit, you might have to modify the toy you're giving and the activity, or just switch to food. It's the most easiest with food. And then once when they're kind of done that, then you say, your release word and they can get up. Over time, decreasing that rate of reinforcement. So sometimes it's easier for animals to do this on a fixed time interval, which is a very fancy word for pretty much saying you're going to count between 1 and 5 seconds. And whatever, like, so if your dog really struggles with this, I do 1 second increments. Or if, they're really starting to kind of get it, we can, kind of do 5. I'm going to say 3 for the example. It's the middleman. So, you ask your dog to sit, you say, good dog, you give them a treat. Once when they've consumed the treat, 1, 2, 3, good treat. 1, 2, good treat. And once when they're sitting for 3 seconds really well, using the fixed rate, we're going to go to 6 seconds. So 1 becomes 2, 5 becomes 10. And so that, using 5 seconds, that's quite a big gap. So sometimes it's always better to use those smaller approximations. That 1 to 2 second kind of range is always what I tell people to do. But some dogs are just really good at it. Like my bassets, they love sitting. they're sitters. So like I could use 5 seconds because it's harder to actually get them to get up than it is for them to for them to stay. So keep doing that until you build up that duration. And although if we wrote it all down, that's a lot of freaking steps. It goes by really quick because we're setting our dog up for success. They're having more success. They're able to learn easier because it is smaller approximations. I mean, if you're asking me to start with doing basic addition and then you're asking me to find the value of X doing algebra, I'm going to be like, what? Like, how did we get here? So if we just, kind of went through the phases and then we taught the dog, algebra and how to solve for X, then that makes sense and we would be successful and we wouldn't hate math quite as much, I'd hope. Some of
Yeah.
us, it's just instincts.
Yeah, I mean, look, I did competition obedience, and with that Malinois behind me on the wall specifically, she got up to a really high level, which was out of sight, downstay with another dog on the field, and I'm not in the picture at all. So I've been there. Like I know how it can be challenging, but yeah, I agree with everything you said. Like as soon as that bump hits the ground, release. Yes, release. Yes, food. Yes, release food. And then it's just building up that time, isn't it, in tiny little increments and not rushing, because as soon as they're sitting, if you don't release them and they're already going down on their hydraulics, or, I'm imagining, I've got this picture in my head of this dog sitting there and then just going down on hydraulics. But you got to capture it before they start doing that. So you've got to initially start releasing. And then that, what you were saying, like, okay, my dog is sitting. Okay, so I say yes as my release word, and then good as my, hey, you're doing what I want, stay there. So it's my duration word. So good, here's some food, good, here's some food. Okay, release. And just building that. Yeah.
Yeah, good is my bridge for my birds, and yes is for the dogs.
Oh, how confusing.
Yeah, yeah. You get used to it after a while. My
Oh my
interns struggle
goodness.
sometimes. They tell the dog's good, and I'm like, it's yes.
As long as they don't get confused. Anne
Yeah.
Marie says, Maria says, this has been helpful. We'll definitely try the 1, 2, 3 dog game with my inattentive doggy. um, Kamala says, Grisha Stewart's bat training is a great way to help your dog work through fear, anxiety, and reactivity. Ray says, oh, your dogs are too cute. Yes, they are so cute.
Yeah, they are. They are. Thank
And
you.
Don says, love you doggies. Melina
Thank
says,
you.
so cute, all 3 of them. Michael says, this has been an excellent webinar, very informative, lots of interesting questions, and of course, adorable dogs making on-screen appearances as well.
We got it all over here.
Ray says, thank you so much for this advice. It's invaluable. This will really help for metal detection machines too, as she's a working dog and all her metal gear has to come off for security checks at the moment. So we do the down stay, but the sit stay might be tidier. Can you not? I would be doing a stand for that. If you've got to take off all equipment, I'd be doing a stay, a stand stay. Yeah.
Yeah, I know with service dogs when I've worked with that, I've really relaxed criteria in those situations where I'm like, as long as you're just staying there, like I don't care if you're staying, laying down, like
Yeah.
just stay there for a moment and then come. Because a lot of dogs, like once you take gear off, they kind of like start to relax in their service dog brain mode. And so I relax and I'm like, just be a model citizen. I don't care what you're doing, just be good and don't embarrass me, and we're okay.
Yeah, yeah. John says, great webinar, many thanks. Ray says, so the dog has to wait and follow me through. Oh, cool. She stands while I take the gift. Oh, gotcha. Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's cool. Oh, wow. So you go through, then the dog goes through. Wow, that's really interesting. Kathy says, I really enjoyed this webinar. Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you for everybody.
Yeah.
And if there's no more questions, thank you, Melanie. Kathy says,
Thank you.
wow, great presentation. Really appreciate this being available. Thank you. Melanie, where can people reach out to you if they want your help?
Yeah, so if you want my help in any way, you can reach out to me either through my website. It's Fluff, the letter N, and then feathers with an S at the end.com. And my email's on there. Everything's on there. I have some free classes and stuff. I have some blogs and all. starting February, my January is crazy. Starting February, we're starting right back up with all the content going up on the website and stuff. So it'll be a lot more
excellent.
consistent.
Yeah. Brilliant.
But yeah, definitely the best way to get in contact with me and find all my information is just on my website.
Yeah. Fluff and Feathers. Cool. Thank you, everybody. Everyone's saying thank you. So yeah, Melanie, thank you so much for giving us your time. I love chatting with you. I know you're on with the summit and I really enjoyed chatting with you. So yeah, it's been a really good conversation.
Yeah, I enjoyed chatting with you. I'm so happy that you are giving me the platform and the opportunity to talk about this, and hopefully there will be more in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. All righty. Take care, everybody. And yeah, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, see you guys. Thank you.
Bye.